Hi, I'm Bruce Nelson. I'm a member of Trees for Life Oregon. One of the activities we've been doing this summer is going on tree walks in different areas in East Portland to look at the street trees that do exist and what doesn't exist, to help people realize the challenges that trees face in our urban setting. This is a problem we all need to work on. We can't leave it up to city officials to solve by themselves. They're going to need our ideas, our inspiration, and hopefully together we can make this part of Portland a better place for people to live in a healthy manner. Urban forestry and government officials may have the dollars, they may have some technical expertise, but each community really needs to figure out what they can do. Was it last summer? A number of people died in Portland during the heat dome. A lot of them were in East County, East Portland. About 25% of the properties have street trees on them, 25%. That's fairly typical for 82nd, 102nd, 122nd, 148th and 162nd. And so it's a challenge. So let's start walking 122nd. For street trees, there are currently no incentives that I'm aware of for homeowners or business owners that front 122nd. No incentive for them to plant trees. Most of 122nd has curb-tight sidewalks, and so there actually may not be any space in the right-of-way for planting. Typically you have what you call tree wells here, or sometimes people call them tree cemeteries, where you have concrete surrounding an area where you have soil. But it's a tough growing environment. Trees are going to have a shorter life. They're not going to get to the size they would in a more natural setting. It's a real challenge. The other thing, when you're planting along a street, the presence of high voltage wires and these other wires, they're going to, at least in Portland, restrict the size of the tree that you can ultimately plant there. But on most streets, the wires are on just one side of the street and they're not on the other side of the street. So in theory, you could plant bigger trees on the side of the street that has no wires. Okay, so we're going to take a little walk now. There's a little bit of a business development down the street, and we'll probably stop there because there are no trees. If you get your tree over here, you could get a tree that's going to be 50 feet tall. Why don't we say trees are an important part of going forward? It's not about commercial development standards of 30 years ago. We need to take into account, we need space for trees. It's all about the tree. If it has adequate rooting space, it can grow. This would be a wonderful area to get a tree big enough that it actually shades the sidewalk for pedestrians, but is not necessarily having issue with the wires. It's all about design. All right, now we're on, quote, a residential street. And what's interesting to me is there is no planting strip here. It's still curb-tight sidewalks. If you're wanting to get trees in the sidewalk, they have to be a certain distance from the fire hydrant. They need to be a certain distance from the water meter. They need to be a certain distance from a driveway. You know, there are all these things that are going to reduce opportunities for trees. So there are a lot of things that say no, no, no to trees, so that's why it's important to get them where it, yes, yes, yes. One of the issues with street trees in Portland is the maintenance of them is the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. There are a number of different individuals in Portland who are concerned about this, and a couple different possibilities exist. One is for smaller trees like this. These could be done by trained volunteers. They could be done by workforce development groups of youth under supervision. working from a ladder or from the ground with proper tools. Training of young trees really helps prolong the life of trees and make them better able to handle windstorms, ice storms, snow weight. Now, once they get bigger, then it does take more equipment, more training. That's not necessarily something I'd want volunteers to do, but it would make sense for the city to take over the pruning of those trees. All right, we'll keep on going. This is 6 feet wide and there are no wires. You could put some trees that would have some stature, but the property owner, Photinia hedge, they want visibility for the empty building that's back there, and I guess for the plaid pantry that's here. Typically, you don't see trees at the intersection. I think they're actually actively discouraged by PBOT, Portland Bureau of Transportation, from putting trees near intersections. That's not the case in other parts of the world. There's an individual in Portland say you could save the life of the asphalt greatly if you can shade it. But anyway, it's the common thing is we don't put them there. Yeah, Linda said visibility. Well, you can train you can work with a tree so you can see around it or underneath of it, and eventually it's tall enough. I'm gonna cross over to the other side of 122nd and walk along the east side of 122nd for a while. Now, these deciduous trees are all flowering pears, which are short-lived, and on 82nd Avenue, they represent 40% of the trees that are there. All right, let's head into the professional building district. We have 2 wonderful true cedars here. They have a fair amount of space. They are evergreen, and so you get advantages in the winter. The advantages you get in the winter, they're stormwater, they're capturing pollutants. You don't need the shade necessarily, but the stormwater management and capturing the pollutants goes on year-round. Let's walk on down. So this is kind of closing comments. The City of Portland has no canopy goals for a commercial street. I mean, how many trees do we want along here? How much canopy do we want? And if you have those goals, then you can say, okay, we need a certain amount of these size trees along this street. How are we going to do it? If you don't have a specific goal for 122nd, you're never going to get there. And so there's no current guideline on what kind of tree species do we want there. I can't emphasize enough the importance of what I think is community-led action. There are many people within the Portland city government that will be supportive, but they need to be pushed. And that's what you're here for. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.